My name is Lita Clark, and I was 29 years old when I learned that being calm, trusting, and secure can make you an easy target. Back then, my life looked grounded from every angle that mattered. It wasn't flashy or curated for likes, but it was solid in the quiet, earned way. I was a commercial airline pilot flying for a regional carrier based out of Charlotte, and I'd been in the cockpit professionally for 6 years. Nothing about that career came easily. I worked my way through it in stages: flight instructor, first officer, then captain, stacking experience one demanding day at a time. Early mornings, long duty days, overnights in cities I barely saw beyond the hotel shuttle route. The work was repetitive, procedural, and far less glamorous than people imagined. No cinematic heroics, no adrenaline-fueled stunts. Most days felt like driving a bus in the sky, following checklists, adjusting for weather, managing delays, and absorbing complaints from passengers who treated turbulence like a personal offense. But there was a calm in it that suited me. Order, systems, knowing that panic at 35,000 feet only makes things worse. I owned a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. I bought it in 2020, when the market dipped and foreclosures were still surfacing. It wasn't pretty when I got it. Worn carpet, outdated fixtures, a bathtub that looked like it had survived a war. But the bones were good. I didn't have endless money, but I had patience and time between trips. I tore out the carpet myself, learned how to refinish hardwood floors from late-night YouTube tutorials, painted every room, replaced lighting, and eventually figured out how to properly caulk a bathtub after completely botching the first attempt and scraping everything off in frustration. By the time I finished, the house barely resembled what I'd bought. It carried my effort in every corner. The backyard became my favorite space. I fenced it in for my dog, Atlas, a 110-pound Bernese mountain dog who believed personal space was optional. I'd rescued him from a family who hadn't understood what a giant breed puppy actually meant. At 8 months old, he was already enormous, and still convinced he was lap-sized. We did obedience classes every Saturday for 3 months. Consistency, repetition, patience. It worked. Atlas became the calmest dog on the block. Neighbors borrowed him for their kids. He sat on command, never jumped, walked perfectly on leash. No matter how chaotic my week had been, he was always the same. Steady, content, happy to exist beside me. That was my life before it tilted. Then there was Ethan. I met him at a wedding in the fall of 2021 through mutual friends. I was paired with him as a groomsman escort for the ceremony. We exchanged polite smiles, traded a few jokes, and somehow ended up talking for hours like it was effortless. Ethan worked in pharmaceutical sales. He was smooth, confident, the kind of person who could hold a conversation with anyone and make them feel interesting. He laughed easily, leaned in when you spoke, carried himself like you had his full attention. Things moved quickly, faster than anything I'd ever done. We started dating in October, were living together by March, and engaged by the following August. He proposed at a lakeside restaurant I loved, timing everything so precisely that the sun dipped below the water just as dessert arrived. He'd planned it all, reservations weeks ahead, coordinating with staff, even sparkling grape juice instead of champagne, because he knew I had an early flight the next morning. The ring was white gold with a princess-cut diamond, thoughtful without being excessive. We FaceTimed parents, siblings, everyone. Wedding planning kicked off immediately. June 2024. Venue booked. Pinterest boards filling up with flowers, table settings, color palettes. His mother got deeply involved, maybe more than necessary, but at the time it felt like enthusiasm, not control. Everything felt aligned until February 2023. That's when Ethan mentioned, casually, that his ex-girlfriend Lauren had messaged him on Instagram. She'd seen our engagement photos and wanted to congratulate us. I didn't react. I wasn't insecure. I didn't monitor phones or social media. I trusted him. Lauren was someone he'd dated for about 2 years in his early 20s. According to him, the breakup was mutual, when she moved away to chase a creative career that never quite materialized. At first it was harmless. Likes turned into comments, comments into texts. Then it became coffee, then lunch. Her name started appearing in conversations more often than I liked, but I told myself not to overthink it. I flew multi-day trips. Ethan had long work days. We had separate lives. Eventually, every conversation curved back toward her. When I finally brought it up carefully, Ethan laughed and said I wasn't the jealous type. The way he said it made me feel foolish for mentioning it at all. So I let it go. By April, he framed my calmness as a compliment. Emotionally mature, secure, appreciative of the fact that I didn't get threatened easily. Then he said he wanted to be sure we were compatible before the wedding. That's when he introduced what he called a trust exercise. A casual meeting. Me, him, Lauren. Public place. So I could see there was nothing strange going on. The moment I hesitated, he tilted his head and said that discomfort would only prove I was bothered. Agreeing meant I was secure, so I agreed. The sports bar he chose was called Rookies, a massive place near the airport with televisions lining every wall and noise loud enough to drown out second thoughts. Neutral ground, he said. Casual, safe. We were supposed to meet at 2. I arrived exactly at 2. As soon as I walked in, I saw them already seated, angled toward each other, mid-conversation. Lauren stood when she noticed me, smiling brightly. She looked exactly like what people picture when they hear ex-girlfriend. Polished, athletic, effortless in a way that felt intentional. She leaned in for a half-hug that felt more like an evaluation. Ethan smiled like everything was unfolding perfectly. We sat. I ordered nachos and a lemonade. They already had food. The noise made everything feel slightly staged. Lauren dove in immediately, commenting on my job, the hours, the time away. Ethan chimed in, describing me as disciplined, calm under pressure. It sounded complimentary and vaguely like a setup. Lauren nodded thoughtfully, talking about priorities, stability, life plans. For nearly an hour, the comments kept coming, never direct, always just off-center. Little comparisons. Casual dismissals disguised as curiosity. When money came up, the atmosphere shifted. Planning a future, she said, required a strong financial base. Kids were expensive. Daycare was insane. Ethan laughed it off, saying they weren't talking about kids yet. Lauren glanced at me and smiled. Eventually, though, I took a slow sip of my lemonade and nodded. Eventually. She smiled again, pleasant and satisfied. Well, good luck with that. Everything's so unpredictable these days. At some point she brought up the ring. Oh my God, Ethan showed me, she said. It's pretty classic. Thank you, I said. She leaned back. I always thought bigger stones were overrated anyway at first, but tastes change. Ethan laughed again. I noticed then what hurt the most. Not the comments themselves, but the silence beside me. Ethan didn't redirect, didn't shut anything down. He watched, smiled, let it happen. Like this was the point. Lauren grew bolder. You know, she said, eyes flicking between us. Ethan and I actually talked about getting married back in the day. My grip tightened on the glass. We even picked names, she continued lightly. Isn't that funny? Madison for a girl, Jackson for a boy. Ethan shifted, uncomfortable now, but still said nothing. That's ancient history, he finally muttered. History matters, Lauren said. It shapes who we become. She turned to me. Do you ever think about his past relationships? Wonder how you measure up? There it was, the real test. The bar noise faded into the background as I set my glass down carefully. I looked directly at her, then at Ethan. I think about it all the time, I said calmly. Mostly how grateful I am that people grow out of situations that no longer serve them. Lauren's smile faltered, and I continued, my voice steady. How lucky I am that I didn't have to compete to be chosen. Silence. Ethan's eyes widened. Lauren laughed nervously. Wow, okay, I was just joking. Me too, I said. Thanks for lunch. I slid out of the booth. Ethan stood halfway. Lita, I'll be outside, I said, already walking away. The parking lot felt like oxygen after being underwater. I unlocked my car, let Atlas out for a minute. He bounded around happily, oblivious, tail wagging like the world was still simple. 15 minutes later, Ethan approached alone. He opened the passenger door and got in, already exhaling like he'd been holding his breath. What was that? He demanded. What was what? I asked, starting the engine. You embarrassed Lauren. I stared straight ahead. She spent an hour insulting me. She was joking, he said quickly. You're being oversensitive. Oversensitive? The words settled between us like a verdict. You set me up, I said quietly. I did not, he snapped. I wanted you to see there was nothing between us. The way she spoke to me, I said, pulling out of the parking lot, said otherwise, and you let it happen. He crossed his arms. You proved my point. I laughed once, short and humorless. And you proved mine. The rest of the drive passed in silence, his phone lighting up repeatedly in his hand. By the time we pulled into my driveway, something fundamental had already broken. I just didn't know yet how deep the damage went. The moment we stepped inside the house, the silence felt heavier than the argument we'd just left in the car. Atlas padded in behind us, nails clicking softly against the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself. He stopped in the hallway, sensing the tension, tail lowering as he looked between Ethan and me, like he was trying to decide which version of us he was supposed to respond to. Ethan dropped his keys onto the counter harder than necessary. I can't believe you acted like that, he said, turning to face me. You made things so awkward. I took off my jacket slowly, deliberately. You're upset because she felt awkward. She was embarrassed, he snapped. She didn't deserve that. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I was supposed to marry in 14 months. The man who'd told me just hours earlier how emotionally mature I was. She spent an hour belittling my career, my income, my future. I said she talked about marrying you, about kids you planned together, and you sat there, smiling. That's not fair, he said immediately. You're twisting it. I sat there and counted how many times you defended me, I said quietly. Do you know what number I landed on? He opened his mouth, then closed it. She was nervous, he said finally. I didn't want to make it worse. So you let it be worse for me. That's not what this was about, he said, running a hand through his hair. This was supposed to prove you trust me. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't test trust by humiliating someone. He crossed his arms. You walked out. You escalated it. I ended it. That was immature. Something in my chest snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but cleanly. I'm not having this conversation right now, I said. I need space. He frowned. Space from what? From me? Yes. I went straight to the bedroom and pulled a duffel bag from the closet. Not mine. His. What are you doing? He asked, following me. I'm helping you pack, I said, opening drawers. You should stay at your apartment for a while. You're kicking me out? His voice cracked with disbelief. Over lunch? Over what that lunch revealed. I moved methodically. Toiletries from the bathroom, clothes from the closet, laptop from the desk. Each item felt like reclaiming oxygen. This is insane, he said. We're engaged and you set me up to be disrespected, I replied. Those two facts can't coexist. He stared at me like I'd suddenly started speaking another language. I wasn't testing you, he insisted. I was just trying to confirm things, I asked, finally turning to face him. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know, he said slowly. That I was making the right choice. My stomach dropped. About marrying me, I said. About us, he corrected quickly. About everything. I waited. He exhaled. Lauren reached out after seeing the engagement photos. She said she regretted how things ended, that she wondered if there was still something there. The room felt very still. So I thought, he continued, words tumbling now, if we all spent time together, either I'd realize I still had feelings for her, or I'd realize I was completely over it. I felt cold. You used me, I said as a comparison. I didn't mean it like that, he said immediately. I realized during that lunch that you're better for me. You treat me like a partner. She's still the same person she was years ago. He said it like it was supposed to comfort me. You let her insult me, I said slowly, so you could figure out your emotions. I didn't think it would go that far. You laughed. I was uncomfortable. So was I I said. The difference is no one protected me. Atlas let out a low bark, as if punctuating the moment. Ethan rubbed his face. I messed up, I know that, but that doesn't mean we throw everything away. It means we pause, I said, and you leave. He stared at the bag in my hands. So that's it? He asked. You're punishing me? No, I said calmly. I'm choosing myself. He took the bag without another word. At the door, he turned back. Call me when you're ready to apologize. I met his gaze. Call me when you understand why I don't owe you one. I locked the door, slid down against it, and Atlas immediately pressed his massive head into my lap. I rested my forehead against his, breathing in and out until the shaking stopped. By Monday morning, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. Ethan, his mother, his sister. Messages ranging from apologetic to accusatory to confused. I ignored them all and went to work. Flying helped. Checklists didn't care about feelings. Procedures didn't gaslight you. Up there, everything was clear. Inputs, outputs, consequences. On Tuesday, I got a message from Lauren. I think things got misunderstood Saturday. Can we talk? I didn't respond. Wednesday night, Ethan showed up at my door. Atlas stood beside me as I opened it. We need to talk, Ethan said, eyes red. You can talk, I replied. From there, he swallowed. It was the first time he'd said it without conditions. I set you up, he admitted. And when you stood up for yourself, I blamed you. That was wrong. It was progress. But some things don't reverse. I don't trust you anymore, I said quietly. And love doesn't survive without trust. He started crying. I closed the door gently. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Messages, pressure, explanations. His family insisting everyone has doubts before marriage. But one thought kept circling back, clear as altitude callouts in a cockpit. Love doesn't test you. Love doesn't observe your pain. Love doesn't ask how much you'll endure before breaking. By the end of week 2, I had my answer. I asked Ethan to meet me at a coffee shop near his apartment. Neutral territory, public, busy enough that emotions would have to stay contained. It was a place called Daily Grind, one of those spots with mismatched chairs, soft indie music playing just loud enough to blur other people's conversations. I arrived early, ordered a black coffee, and chose a table tucked into the corner where I could see the door without being on display. When Ethan walked in, I barely recognized him. His shoulders were slumped. His hair looked unwashed. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He scanned the room until he found me, then froze for a moment like he was bracing himself before approaching. He sat down slowly. Hey, he said. Hi. He didn't order anything, just folded his hands on the table and stared at them like they might give him answers. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then his composure cracked. I'm sorry, he said, his voice shaking. I know I already said it, but I really am. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I watched him carefully, not with anger, with distance. I've thought about everything, I said calmly, over and over. He nodded quickly. Me too. I'll do anything to fix this. I've cut off Lauren completely, blocked her everywhere. I swear I'll go to counseling. We can go together. I'll prove I've changed. I took a slow breath. This wasn't one mistake, I said. It was a pattern. He shook his head. It was fear. I panicked. You reconnected with your ex. You kept her in our conversations. You arranged that lunch. You sat there while she disrespected me. And when I finally defended myself, you blamed me. Each sentence landed heavier than the last. I didn't see it that way at the time, he whispered. That's part of the problem, his eyes filled with tears. I love you, Lita. I believed him, and that made it harder. I don't doubt that, I said, but love doesn't erase what happened. He leaned forward. Please don't throw away 2 years over one bad decision. I'm not throwing anything away, I replied. I'm responding to the truth. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he asked the question he'd been avoiding. So, what does this mean? I looked him directly in the eyes. I don't think we should get married, I said. And I don't think we should stay together. The words settled heavily in the air. He broke down, not loudly, not dramatically, quiet tears slipping down his face as he pressed his lips together to keep himself from sobbing. Please, he said. Everyone deserves a second chance. This wasn't about forgiveness, I said gently. It's about trust, and mine is broken. What about the wedding, he asked. We're far enough out to recover most of the deposit, I said. We'll split whatever costs are left. And the ring? I paused. I thought about that, I said. Technically, I could ask for it back, but I won't. He looked up, stunned. Keep it, I continued. Sell it, trade it, do whatever you want. I'm not fighting over jewelry. That seemed to hit him harder than anything else. I can't believe this is happening, he whispered. I can, I said quietly, because it already did. I stood up. He reached out instinctively, then stopped himself. Is there any chance, he asked, voice barely audible, that you'll change your mind? I felt only sadness. No, I said, I'm sorry. I walked out without looking back. The aftermath was exactly as messy as you'd expect. Calls from his family, messages insisting I was being harsh. His mother left me a voicemail saying I was cruel for abandoning her son over a misunderstanding. I blocked numbers, focused on work, flew routes, walked Atlas at night under quiet streetlights. 2 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Ethan and Lauren had tried again. 6 weeks. That's how long it lasted. She cheated on him with someone from her work. The irony didn't feel satisfying, just clarifying. Last I heard, Ethan tells people we grew apart. That's one way to describe discovering that someone you planned to marry was willing to sacrifice your dignity to resolve their unfinished business. What I learned is simple, and I won't forget it. Love doesn't test you. Love doesn't watch you suffer. Love doesn't ask how much you'll endure to prove you're worthy. The weeks after the breakup were strangely calm. Not easy, but quiet. The messages eventually stopped. Ethan's family moved on to something else to be upset about. Mutual friends stopped trying to update me on his life. I blocked the last unfamiliar number and felt a kind of silence settle in that didn't feel lonely, just clear. I heard much later that Ethan and Lauren had tried again. It lasted a little over a month. She cheated on him with someone from work. He found out the way people always seem to in stories like this, by accident, too late, with the truth sitting right there on a phone screen. When a mutual friend told me, waiting for my reaction, all I felt was confirmation. Not satisfaction, not relief, just confirmation. Atlas and I kept our routines. Morning walks, evening walks, quiet nights at home. I flew. I stopped replaying the bar scene in my head, stopped wondering if I'd been too harsh, stopped questioning whether being understanding should have cost me my self-respect. Here's what I know now. If someone loves you, they don't test you. They don't observe your pain like data. They don't let someone else disrespect you just to see what happens. Love isn't a loyalty experiment. It's a choice made clearly without spectators. I chose myself, and that choice brought me peace.